We have two candidates with us today. I'll offer very brief introductions since they're going to introduce themselves, I assume, during the introductory remarks. Our first candidate is Mitchell Jacob. Mr. Jacob has 2 associate's degrees, a BA in political science, and a JD from University of Oklahoma College of Law. He also served in the Army from 2017 through 2022. Our other candidate is Jeff Pixley. Mr. Pixley has a BA in sociology and MAs in business administration and national security resource strategy. Mr. Pixley spent over 30 years in the Air Force. By winning a coin flip, Mr. Jacob will introduce himself first, followed by Mr. Pixley. Go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Crespin. Good evening, you beautiful people, and thank you so much for being here and for making the trek to Wayne, Oklahoma for this CD4 Voter Forum. What I wanted to say today is that this is not just a voter forum, and you're not just passive witnesses to the things that we're going to say tonight. This is a job interview, and you are the hiring committee. You'll have a decision to make, and on June 16th, you'll be tasked with deciding which of us is the stronger candidate to represent the Democratic nomination for the November general election. And so to assist you in making that decision, here are 3 of my strengths. Number 1, I have served in the United States Army, and I am honored to have deployed to southern Syria in support of Operation Inherent Resolve. My time in the Army taught me a lot about the federal government and how bureaucracy could work, and it has also taught me to work with anyone from any background at any time in any place. Number 2, I am a licensed attorney, and more accurately, I am a public defender. I fight every single day on behalf of individual liberties and to support individual constitutional rights, and I promise that I'll continue to support and defend yours. And number 3, speaking of strength, I promise you that I have the strength to get through a boring congressional hearing without falling asleep. I'm looking at you, Tom Cole. So as you listen to us tonight, I hope you'll keep that in mind so that you can make the most informed decision for you and pick your most preferred candidate at that June 16th ballot. I look forward to your questions tonight, and once again, thank you for being here.
Go ahead.
So I'll echo Mitchell's thank you for being here and for the opening words. This is a huge deal, seeing this many people coming out for a Democratic primary forum this early in the campaign season, and it's reflected everywhere I've been since I launched my campaign on September 1st. This enthusiasm is real across the district, and it is proof to me that this is a winnable race, that we are entering a time in our country, in this district, where if we pick the right person, we can win this district and shock the nation. I know this in my heart, and you are evidence of that today. So as was mentioned, my name is Jeff Pixley. I'm a retired colonel from the United States Air Force, and I didn't expect to be here today. Well, when I woke up this morning, I did. But if you'd asked me a year ago if I'd be here today, the answer would be no. A year ago, I was a professor at the University of Oklahoma and commander of Air Force ROTC, and fulfilling my dream of serving in the Air Force in my final job, where I got to take the young people that are about to be lieutenants in the Air Force and infuse them with the core values and the discipline and the character that we need in our rising leaders in the United States Air Force. That's a dream job. I was hired to do that job as my final job, and when I came to the University of Oklahoma to do that, my wife and I, Andrea, decided to plant our flag, and we decided this is it. 15 moves is enough. We're staying here. And I expected to be in that job until summer of 2026. And then on the morning of February 15th of 2025, I woke up to the news that the president had fired the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General C.Q. Brown. He had fired Admiral Alicia Franchetti, who was a chief of naval operations. And most alarmingly to me, he had fired the lead lawyers over all the services. Those are the people who are charged with making sure the orders that come from the president down to people like me and below me in the armed forces are constitutional, they pass legal muster, and that they can be executed with confidence and no question about whether the folks are doing the right thing. And when I read that news that Saturday morning, I realized I was at a personal crossroads, because my mind started spinning about what the possibilities might be for me and my cadets and my Air Force. And the scenarios that I came up with were alarming enough to me that I thought, I'm going to be asked to violate my oath of office that I took when I was 17 years old back in 1989 while still a senior in high school. And I realized I couldn't possibly do that. So I woke up an hour later. My wife woke up and I said, "My dear, I have news. I'm retiring from the United States Air Force, and I'm going to take out Tom Cole in 2026." Thank you.
All right, the first of 6 questions goes to Mr. Pixley. When asked in a recent survey, 1/3 of the population said the state of the economy was the most important problem facing the nation, the high cost of living cited the most. What is your plan to help the constituents of this district on the issue of affordability?
A great question, and that survey is reflected in what I'm seeing when I talk to folks on the campaign trail. People are being pinched every day, not just by an economy that seems to be built for rich people to be successful and the regular working person to be struggling, but every day we are seeing decision making coming from Washington, D.C. that makes that pressure higher. The tariffs that were imposed by the president unilaterally, skipping Congress in their responsibility to take a role in that, is putting pressure on an already difficult economy for people to work in. When I get to Washington, D.C., one of my first priorities, and if you've read my walk card, you'll see this on there. When I say restore constitutional balance, what I'm talking about is the wild overreach of the executive branch that has been happening over the last really about 2 decades. But that creep has turned into a giant pull, and we have a president now, an administration who seems bound and determined to execute every bit of the power that they've amassed and push the envelope even further. And by imposing tariffs in a way that punishes the American people and then gaslights them into believing that somebody else is paying the bill, Congress can fix that. Congress has a responsibility to fix that. And Tom Cole, as the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, certainly has the influence and power to do it if he chose to use it. So mission number 1 for me is restore the constitutional balance and get Congress back in the business of governing our country instead of sitting on the sidelines. On top of that, the American people have for too long been toiling with a minimum wage that has not kept up with inflation, not even close. And I know Oklahoma is about to vote on this and go to $15 an hour by 2029. That's too little and too long, too far away from now. That needs to happen faster. It hasn't kept up with the with inflation, and it's robbed the American people of their ability to turn their day-to-day work, toiling for the people who are really lining their pockets, to build a better lives, own their homes, and put their kids in either in college or into a trade where they feel like they're going to do better than their parents. Just this morning, my wife showed me an article that said the average age of the new home buyer in our country today is over 50 years old. The average new home buyer, first home, 50 years old. That's a broken system, and we don't have to tolerate that minimum wage increase, and getting the tariffs taken off our backs is day 1 work for us. Thanks.
Article 1 of the United States Constitution invests the power to impose taxes with Congress. And yet from day 1, the Trump administration has been defying that constitutional requirement. And we've watched a whipsaw foreign policy, imposing tariffs because he disliked someone, imposing tariffs for no reason at all, and imposing tariffs that are bankrupting American small businesses, farmers, and hardworking people right here in our local communities. What we know is that a rising tide can lift all boats. And what I want to see is an expansion, a massive expansion of the Small Business Administration. Because one thing that strikes me as we deal with increasing costs and low wages is that this is a model that benefits corporate America while pushing the expenses and the costs back onto the people. If you can work at Walmart and have employment while also qualifying for SNAP benefits, then that is a system of exploitation, and it must end. It is time to take care of the people and no longer continue with a system of corporate welfare, because we decry socialism as a country constantly, and yet socialism exists well and good if you have enough money right now. And to that point about home ownership, what I had written here is that I want to see an expansion. In 2019, my wife and I struggled to afford a $139,000 home as our first home. And since 2019, we know that the average cost of a home has, in some localities, doubled, tripled, or quadrupled across this country. And while that is wonderful for the folks who already owned those homes, it means that the rest of Americans wonder if they'll ever own anything other than debt. And that is a reality that I want to resolve. We have a FHA, we have a housing administration, we have HUD, the Housing and Urban Development Agency, and we have systems in place. We already have loan programs to allow people to start those businesses and own those homes. And I want to see that expand because the people, you, deserve a government that supports you. Thank you.
Nope, I'm good. Thank you. Okay, all right. Now we have time for questions from the audience on the topic of the economy, and we'd ask one question for one candidate and the second question for the other. Just please raise your hand if you have a question. Ma'am?
What is your plan to tackle these large corporations?
We know that on July 4th of 2025, President Donald Trump signed the big, beautiful bill into law, and that was one of the largest tax breaks for corporations and the wealthy in United States history, to a tune of $4 trillion. And that money is not going to you. That money is going to the wealthiest among us, to the billionaires and to the corporations. And while it is not easy to accomplish, to me the solution is simple. We begin to roll back those tax breaks that do not benefit the American people, that keep pushing costs back onto us, and that keep the struggle amongst those who need the most help. And what I want to see is, if we're going to spend $4 trillion, fine. Spend it on the programs that most help people. Let's create Medicare for all, and let's see a higher minimum wage, and let's see an expansion of SNAP that only costs $40 billion per month, by the way, and is a drop in the bucket of what we spend on some of these tax breaks. So to be very clear and simple, I would roll back the tax breaks that we've been offering and use them to fund the programs that most benefit you and me.
I get to respond to that.
Another question from the audience, directed to you.
It has to be me.
Yes.
Okay.
Billions collected in tariffs, we're only going to get back a few thousand. So, okay.
So I agree with you. I think the president is using the specter of the complexity and how expensive it will be to claw back the billions in tariffs as an excuse not to give it back to the American people. That's no excuse. He should give it all should come back to us, even though it's a complicated matter to get it back to us. And he's not going to do it himself. He's proven himself, and his whole administration has proven themselves unwilling to do the right thing, even when there's an uprising about it. There's plenty of, I'm sure we'll talk about that in a minute. And the truth is, the president's hanging on to corporate America and their love of the president is because we have effectively turned into a patronage economy, where if you want to be successful in our country, the recipe is not hard work and education and sacrifice. It's a plane ticket to Washington, D.C., a suitcase full of money, and genuflecting in front of the president. That's what we have now. And only Congress can stop that. He's not going to stop that himself. And if we really want to stop corporate America from having their hooks into the political system and getting us to make bad decisions, we need to get corporate money out of politics. I'm not taking any corporate money. I'm not taking foreign influence money. This campaign is going to be run by small dollar contributors, and across our country, if every congressman skewed corporate money and stopped making themselves rich in office by trading stocks and all those other things, that even if someone's doing it on the up and up, the mere appearance of impropriety erodes trust in our government. And the trust in Congress is about as low as it's ever been historically. And that's not by accident. It's by the behavior of members of Congress who have decided that their own political or financial ambitions are more important than the people in their district. So we have to fight that, but we have to set the example. And that starts in the campaign. You don't wait till you get to office to do the right thing. You do the right thing in the campaign, keep it small dollars, and tell corporations if they want to impress me, pay their people more. Stop abusing their employees. Let them unionize. That's how we take back the power from our government.
Two questions per question. Yeah, so we agreed on 2 questions for the audience for each set of questions. So I'm going to move on to our next topic. Yeah, no problem.
We're going to do another set of questions. You'll have a chance to ask then.
Yes.
The second question, Mr. Jacob will answer first. You, as well as your opponent, spent time serving your country in the military. How will your military experience help to serve the constituents of this district?
As you know, the United States federal government is vast. It is staffed by more than 1 million wonderful heroes who show up to work every day despite the political environment that we're in today. It's more than 1 million active duty service members in National Guard and Reserve. And through my time in the Army, I had the privilege and pleasure of being able to interact with folks from across multiple agencies to build those relationships. And one thing that the Army taught me, one of the most valuable lessons in my opinion, is how to work with anyone from any background. Because you do not get to choose who your battle buddy is when you deploy, or when you go through a training, or whenever you learn a new skill. What you get to do is put a smile on and keep working forward toward the goal. The Army taught me how to accomplish the mission underfunded, with not enough staff, and without the resources that you're supposed to have, and yet the mission doesn't go away. And it has taught me how to keep pushing forward, even when I wasn't even sure how to make something possible based on the scenario we were in. For those of you who weren't aware, in 2020, I had the great pleasure of deploying to southern Syria. I deployed on January 7th of 2020. And as you know, right after that, COVID hit. Our supply lines were affected. Food stopped being delivered on time. Weapons and ammo started getting lost en route. Mail was shut off entirely, at least incoming to country. The phone lines were no longer staffed because domestically they were on COVID rotations and schedules. And yet, even though I couldn't get someone to answer in the United States, we were still there. And we still had to do the job. And listening as I missed my child's first birthday, listening as I was being told we can't find wipes and diapers, and yet knowing that there is always something more important than all of the things that you wish you could do. I wish I could be home for my son's birthday, but I was in the right place, doing the job that I signed up for, and I was honored to have been able to do it. So in short, what the Army taught me is that the mission comes first, and I'm willing to work with anyone across any aisle, and I'd be happy to do it. Thank you.
I was born to 2 Air Force veterans who served in the Vietnam era, and I grew up in essentially a shrine to military service for them and for my grandparents' generation who fought in World War II. So I was destined to be in the military. It was part of who I was. When I joined the Air Force at 17 years old and was introduced to our core values, integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all we do, those sounded like taglines, but we had to memorize them. And over the years of service and being asked to put my oath of office to the test with deployments, with late night shift work, being gone, missing birthdays, many of those, what I learned in my 35 years of service is there are some things that are worth sacrificing everything for. And when you're in the military, you're surrounded by people who've made that same promise. They write that blank check to the service, and they say that this mission, whatever it is, even if it may not be something they agree with. When I first deployed to Iraq, I was extremely skeptical about our reasoning for being in Iraq, as many of us were. Probably a lot of people in this room were. But I didn't hesitate when I was called to go because it was my job to go there and execute that mission. When you take an oath, you must uphold it. And no matter how many hours you're asked to work, no matter how much your family's asked to sacrifice to allow you to do that, it's your job to do that. And if you can't do that, you only have one option, and that's to resign and go find something else to do. So the nexus with a congressional run for me is I see this run as a continuation of that promise I made in 1989 to always serve my country. My oath ends with so help me God, not with until further notice. I'm serving all the way until my dying breath to defend this country the way I was asked to when I was 17, and when they asked me to deploy to Iraq, when they put a nuclear bomb on my airplane, when they asked me to work on Air Force One, when they asked me to leave my family behind for a year, when they asked me to be in Alaska during COVID and have my family spread around the world where I couldn't reach out to them. I did every one of those things with a smile on my face because I knew I was doing what my family raised me to do and the promise I made them. And when I get to Congress, I'll be doing it again for you.
Would you like to respond briefly?
Just briefly, because of what we see in our country today, the Army taught me to always put the mission first. But what it also taught me is to never accept an illegal order. And so what that will teach me is in a congressional hearing, when ICE says I was just following orders, or when someone who did that second strike on a boat in the ocean says I was just following orders, I will know the true answer to that question is that it is never legal to obey an illegal order. And I will be willing, ready, and able to push back on that rhetoric that escapes accountability and responsibility. And that is a promise I will make to you.
Now we'll have two questions on the topic of the military, one for each candidate. Sir?
Not the military, I'm sorry.
Okay. Sir?
I want to know just how far are you willing to push back?
Abolish ICE, impeach Pete Hegseth.
How will you distinguish yourself from Cole, who you will be faced with, to distinguish yourself from and all the things that you know more in terms of supporting the military? Well,
That's a fantastic question. And it's often one that comes up when I'm on the campaign trail, when I meet Republicans in nature. Because one of the first things they'll say is, well, but he's sure been good to the military. He kept Tinker open. And my feedback to that is, Tinker wasn't going anywhere. Tinker is one of three depots, one of three organizations in the Air Force who does that work. Tinker was under no threat, and walking and saying I saved Tinker is like saying I saved you from a hippopotamus stampede in this room today. It's not impressive to me that he's done that. So claiming to have done something that you didn't do is, I have heartburn with that from an integrity perspective. But as someone with deep roots in the military, and as was mentioned in my bio, the Air Force sent me to Washington, D.C., and I got a master's degree in national security resource strategy. So the defense industrial base is something that I'm educated in and have tons of experience in. And what Oklahoma has to offer on that front is incredible. Not only the bases that we have, but the universities and research systems, all those that could contribute to to creating economic opportunity in Oklahoma outside from just keeping Tinker open or just keeping Fort Sill open. We can leverage that if we take advantage of the opportunities that are provided out there. I would love to echo precisely Mitch's words. I do echo them on ICE. That's an easy one. I have to be careful because Senator Mark Kelly is experiencing right now what I would experience if I echoed your second sentiment. But I stand close to people who say words like that because he's not going to jail if he says it, and I might. But just know that integrity matters. And in our federal government, and this is a Senate thing, not a Congress. So I'm not going to fix this when I get to Congress. But the United States Senate needs to start taking seriously the job of confirmation hearings, both for members of cabinet and for Supreme Court justices. Accountability.
Thank you. The third question is to Mr. Pixley. Immigration and immigration enforcement have been in the news a great deal lately. How would you deal with immigration and immigration enforcement if elected?
Great question. Our immigration system is broken, and it's broken on purpose. It's broken on purpose by people who want to create a class of citizens, a class of people in the country, workers who can be exploited easily and taken advantage of in their communities, in their businesses, and in their lives. The people who know best this are the people in the border states who are watching every day how the influx of migrants affects them directly. And the feedback from them is not that there's a bunch of murderers and other scoundrels coming across. It's about resources. It's about taking good care of people. It's about making sure that they have access to the essential needs that every person has. The fact is that immigration is a net positive for our country. That's undisputable. It's completely correct. And historically, America's been a nation of immigrants. And this broken system that we've created is, it still baffles me when people point at the immigration system and point at those who get here without going through the process. Those are people who haven't researched what the process is. It is nearly impossible to legally immigrate to this country today. There's a great study by Cato Institute, and Cato's not some radical left-leaning organization. Cato wrote a paper called the Impossibility of Legal Immigration. We have created a system that makes it hard for people to follow the rules, but because of not only push out of their home countries, but the very attractive pull for our way of life, which people are striving to be a part of, that we only have one small, narrow point of entry and create a backlog around it is our doing. And this is the only time I'm going to say this, I promise. But people like James Langford even know that. And that James Langford proposed legislation that would have been a step in the right direction, and it got shot down by this administration, proves the point that it's on purpose. We had a way to fix it, and instead of fixing it, they gave people the culture war issue. When I get to Congress, we are done playing that game. There are ways to fix this. We can add more immigration judges. By the way, immigration judges that don't answer to the executive branch. The fact that the president gets a direct phone call to tell someone to close the gate or not let someone in makes no sense. And we must end the terrible discrimination that's happening based on people's religion, their national origin, their race. That's not America. That's not who we are.
I see that the immigration system has two primary issues right now. On the one hand, we deal with enforcement of immigration, and on the other hand, we deal with the immigration system itself. For example, in July of last year, instead of appropriating $100 billion to hire those judges or to expand processing capacity or to build courtrooms, we appropriated $100 billion to enforcement. And we have now built an ICE deportation facility in almost every major city in the United States of America, to include Tulsa and Oklahoma City. It's happening right here. But we know that the reason that we're experiencing those who wish to be in our country without waiting for to fulfill the requirements to fully be a citizen or to get that residency is not because they do not want to. Most of them have tried. Instead, it's because we know that it is 8 to 12 years on average before you'll get that decision. And being forced to wait 8 or 12 years in the country that you're trying to get away from is putting people's lives at risk. And that is why they're coming to the greatest country in the world. And it is on us to create a system that can vet them, that can process these applications, and can allow more people to come into our country to contribute to it. And what I want is to see these processed in under 18 months. Whether that's citizenship, asylum, refugee, those should be faster. But I'll start with 18 months, and also for residency. And then we have enforcement. Again, abolish ICE. While we're getting there, let's start reining them in. No more masks. Congress has the power to do that. No more detention facilities, because if the point of ICE is to deport, then deport. But clearly, the point is control. It is fear. It is violence. 3,000 Proud Boys on the streets of Minneapolis, that looks a lot like history, my friends. It looks a lot like history. And I refuse to sit idly by while history continues to repeat itself. And that is why I'm here in front of you today, to tell you that I will hold these people, that's what they are, these Proud Boys, individually responsible for their actions, that they are not representative of the federal government, and that we can go after them in their individual capacity, and that they do not get shielded just because they're representative, not of my United States of America, I'll tell you that quite clearly. Just because you've been hired does not mean that you represent our will. And so it is time that we eliminate that blanket protection, and that we allow, because it is the people who come first. The laws are not more important than citizenship, and no more U.S. citizenship should be wrapped up in a single ICE operation. Thank you.
Would you like to respond?
Just really a pile-on versus a response. Qualified immunity and the president giving a permission structure for people to abuse citizens and non-citizens is abhorrent. When we get to Congress, the very first matter we need to undertake is strict oversight and subpoenaing of training records, recruiting records, every field order, every internal communication, every video, every one of those things are government records. They belong to us as the American people. We have the right to see them, and we need to prosecute every single person from the top of the chain of command all the way down for those people who violated human rights and violated the law. Full stop.
Yes.
Does anyone have a question about immigration? Ma'am?
Historically, Democrats are described as weak. And current situations notwithstanding, statistically, Democrats overcompensate for that identity by being harsh on crime, drugs, immigration, etc. Can we trust that that sort of compensation and that sort of overswinging won't happen?
That's an excellent question. And, we could have a whole series on the Democrat, sorry for those ODP people in the room, the Democratic Party's reputation in Oklahoma is not awesome. And being accused of doing the switcheroo after getting elected is something that just feeds on that. So as I campaign, my approach to folks is pretty simple. You're going to get who I am, and I'm going to let you ask me questions, and I'm going to give you my honest answer. And if you don't think that's a good answer, then now you can make a good decision about whether or not to support me. These are complex matters, and law enforcement is something that matters to me. I was raised by a police officer. I don't even speed, right? I'm one of those guys that I really, my wife is nodding right now because it drives her crazy. I do believe in law enforcement, strict law enforcement, but honorable law enforcement that follows the rules, that's accountable to the people. And you don't have to have some war on X, war on drugs, war on this in order to do that. What you need is a war on incompetence. You need a war on bias in our society, a war on selective enforcement. The truth of the matter is the likelihood of you going to prison in this country is more determined by the color of your skin and how much money you have in the bank than it is on whether you've committed a crime or not. And I'm sure there's at least one lawyer in the room who might agree with me on that. Democrats can't go, we can't strive to get Republican votes, and we're going to need them, right? Mitchell, we've done the math. We know how many Republicans we have to pull to our side, and there's no chance that I'm going to go to a Republican and tell them a story about being tough on something or giving them some present to trick them into voting for me. I'm going to be honest with them and tell them what I'm going to do. I'm not going to play that. The war on drugs has been an utter failure. The war on drugs is an utter failure. It's hurt thousands and thousands and thousands of people in Oklahoma. There are people in prison right now today. They have no business being in prison. What they need, at best, they need to be released and get some treatment for whatever their addiction such that it exists. We can do a lot better than that. So I'm not going to do this switcheroo. And we do have to find a way in this state to address the concerns and needs of the people across the district. Right? This is not a Democratic leaning district, so the needs and desires of Republicans matter. But not a single one I've talked to has led with the crime problem in Oklahoma. They care about affordability. They care about the future of their farms and the cattle prices, whether they can fix their farm equipment or whether they have to take it to the dealership and get approval to fix it. That's what they're worried about. And when a Democrat stands in front of a Republican and makes a promise on one of those culture war issues, we need to take care. We're not trading our honor for a vote. I'm not going to do that.
Another question on the topic of immigration.
I have a question.
What's up? Go ahead.
Many of these communities that are being targeted by the Trump administration were communities that were granted some sort of refugee status from Somalia or Haiti. Trump is now targeting these groups and threatening to revoke all of their protections that Biden would give. Would you support some sort of congressional effort to guarantee these protections cannot be just stripped by the next president that comes along?
Our immigration laws are determined by Congress, not by the executive branch. It is not on the President of the United States of America to decide who should be allowed in this country, who should remain in this country, and whether or not someone should even be in this country to begin with. And it is time that we put the force in the full throat of the American Constitution back into place. It is time for Congress to take its role back and to stop ceding it to a president who has clearly never read the United States Constitution and who has surrounded himself with people who have no desire but to see it shredded into a million little pieces. Wherever you're from, wherever you find yourself today, you matter, and you matter to me. I'm very glad that you're in the United States of America, and I'm glad that you want to call this place that I love home. My wife, for those of you who don't know, is a naturalized citizen of the United States of America, and I worry. We have seen this administration go after even those who are naturalized status. He's talked about denaturalization. He's talked about stripping Americans of their American citizenship. And quite frankly, I am not sure where in the United States Code he finds the authority to do so. And I'll tell you why. Because it's not there. That is a pipe dream at best, and it is a blatant unconstitutional attack on American citizens at worst. And it is time that Congress do something about it. It is time that Congress take the reins back and reassert the constitutional balance that is supposed to exist in our immigration system. No more separating families. No more ripping children from the arms of their parents, or even worse, ripping parents out of a car and leaving the children. How about we put humanity, respect, and decency back into the way that we go about enforcing immigration? Because we know for a fact that the Biden administration and the Obama administration each individually deported far more people than the Trump administration has. And they did it without fear. They did it without violence in the streets. They did it without masked cowards. And they did it without threatening denaturalization or to go after American citizens themselves. And yet this is what we have today. So what I pledge, if you put me on an oversight committee or an immigration oversight committee, is we'll start bringing them in. I want to see, where is the legal basis for the actions you're taking? Where is the legal basis for the paperwork that you're sending out? And I want to see the communications of how you're getting to these positions. And I want to know who's on the board that's deciding when and how to strip anyone of their rights and their constitutional protections. Thank you.
All right, fourth question goes to Mr. Jacob. With the war in Ukraine, a possible revolution in Iran, and talk of the United States acquiring Greenland, our foreign policy is facing many challenges. How would you describe your doctrine when it comes to foreign affairs?
What strikes me is all of these things that we have talked about today are happening domestically right here within the United States of America. And yet we have a president who believes that he has the right to go, for example, into Venezuela and to kidnap a sitting president and bring him into the United States to be held to answer for, by the way, violations of U.S. law. And yet he also pardoned another president who was in federal prison on the exact same charges. We have a foreign policy that makes no sense. To say it the most mild way that I will choose to say it today. But all of this is occurring while American businesses are failing, while inflation is on the way up, while we're opening investigations into Jerome Powell because he's doing his duty to ensure that the American economy does not collapse. So my message to Mr. Trump is very simple. Let's build America first. Let's put Americans first. And let's worry about our domestic economy, ensuring health care for our citizens and our children, feeding our children in schools, investing in those same public schools. Let's ensure that there's Medicare for all. Let's pass the premium tax credits that are failing in the United States Senate right now. And let's worry about building this country back up right now in this particular administration rather than signaling to the world this virtue signaling that clearly does not exist. We are not the leader that we once were as a result of this administration's actions. And it's time. I want to put America first and Americans first because we have no right to be doing the words that we're using for Greenland are very dangerous to me. We are threatening to wage us all into war. We know that multiple countries have now deployed troops to Greenland for exercises for the foreseeable future because of the rhetoric that is coming out of the White House. We know that security is being beefed up across Latin American countries because they now know that we are clearly willing to kidnap presidents and yet leave regimes the same that they were. We didn't take out the regime. We just took the head. And I know the question was about foreign policy, but I think that it's time that America work on herself first before we pretend that we have any moral right to tell the rest of the world how to run their countries.
I haven't workshopped the name of it yet, of the doctrine. We've heard that President Trump is calling it the Don Road Doctrine, which is, if you haven't heard it yet, it's basically destroy the world. And while my first priority is the American people, the people of the 4th District, and people I know and love in my family, the last thing I want is for us to focus inward and spend all our time healing ourselves and ignoring the world, and then wake up, or have my kids wake up and see a Europe that's been overrun by Russia, and a Taiwan that's now Chinese, and a South Korea that has now been overrun by the North Koreans. We have the capacity to do both, but what we have to do is rebuild the trust. So maybe the doctrine should be called Restore the World's Trust. We have thrown that away. And I was in the Air Force long enough to be there right as the Cold War ended, when the Berlin Wall fell. We stood proudly as the only remaining superpower that had credibility on the world stage. And our policy, while imperfect, was something that people pointed to and wanted to model their own systems after. They modeled their military training after us. They bought our weapon systems. We benefit from the being reflected in our allies around the world in a way economically right here in Oklahoma. We should not throw that away. The president's threat against Greenland would be the death of NATO. And if you haven't studied NATO, the death of NATO at our hands would be a stain on our history that is in the same category as slavery. And I'm not exaggerating. Because what will happen in Europe, what we will have given away, what we have fought for 75 years will be thrown away in an instant, because Vladimir Putin is waiting. He's waiting for us to do that. If we walk away from NATO or destroy it with a Greenland invasion, it will be our fault. What happens in Europe will be our fault. We can do both. And Tom Cole knows better. And he was interviewed on a Fox News affiliate the other night, and it was a phone call interview, so I didn't get to see his face when he said this. So I don't know if he was beat red with embarrassment as he uttered these words, but he described Greenland as nominally controlled by the Danes. That's a funny way of saying a sovereign nation. And you'd think Tom Cole would know what the word sovereignty means. He's walking away from the Danes, and he gave the permission structure to the president to either acquire Greenland by force or through coercion, which is the tack they're taking now. We have to stop that. We can protect America and restore trust on the world stage by just being good citizens.
My response will be very brief. We have a DoD budget of greater than $1 trillion. We have greater than 1 million active duty troops. And we spend more than the next 9 countries combined. We have fully invested in our foreign might. I believe it's time that we work for just a little while on our domestic well-being. Thank you.
Does anyone have a question on foreign affairs? Sir?
Yeah, maybe for Jeff. So we've seen Israel go from being a close ally to some toxic version of your crazy uncle who comes over for Thanksgiving. And I'm just wondering, we don't see anyone in the U.S. government willing to call out any of their abuses and the military abuses in Gaza and things like that. I mean, really horrible, horrible stuff. And yet it seems like there may be 3 people in the entire Congress who can say anything about it. So what's going to be your approach to Israel, and how do we push back on some of the worst abuses we see over there?
Thank you. That's a phenomenal question. I'll begin with a really important point. Everybody look me in the eyeballs when I say this. What happened in Gaza was genocide. It is. It was. What's happening in Gaza is genocide. And as a person who had to gain expertise in putting bombs on target, it was literally my job to put warheads on foreheads. And war is awful. War is terrible. But we have the technology, as do the Israelis, of being very selective and precise to the second. I can put a bomb with my F-16 to the second to a very classified small space. And here's the deal. Once you have the ability to do that, you have the moral obligation to do that. And Benjamin Netanyahu and his government have all those resources, and instead of using that precision and being selective and sparing the lives of innocent children and non-combatants in that, don't get me wrong, what Gaza was a problem that they needed to address. Terrorism is a problem people need to address. We don't have to murder a bunch of innocents to get it done. And a moral stance. This is why we honor military members who follow the law of armed conflict. Because the law of armed conflict sometimes requires you to take additional risk yourself to be sure you don't harm someone. And Israel has failed to do that. And to make sure that nobody wonders where I stand on this matter, notice I didn't say the word Jewish. This is not about religion. This is about a government that's abusing its neighborhood, and Benjamin Netanyahu is not a friend of our country. And to specifically your question, I don't know if there's even 3 in Congress, but if you're taking AIPAC money, as far as I'm concerned, your judgment is suspect. If you're taking AIPAC money, your judgment is suspect.
Yes.
Another question on foreign affairs?
Yeah, I think the USAID agency was a pretty good bargain we had for influencing, providing goodwill and getting influencing or gaining influence for countries around the world. Would you support like reinstating that?
So what we've been discussing thus far is hard power, the ability of the United States to wage and win war. But there are other types of powers that exist. For example, USAID was our best avenue for soft power, for eradicating diseases, for feeding families, for staffing clinics, for ensuring that those who are willing to go out and put themselves at risk in places that most Americans will never step foot, that they had the resources to do so. That was its only purpose. And domestically, we know that USAID was the #1 purchaser of domestically grown crops. So we have shot ourselves in both feet. First, We're letting crops rot in warehouses while discussing bridge loans to farmers when we didn't have to impose those tariffs, we didn't have to destroy USAID, and this problem wouldn't have existed if he had followed the law, quite frankly. And then beyond that, now the only thing that is out there for the United States is our military presence. We are no longer sending those medicines, we're no longer sending those vaccines, that food that help those resources and staff and workers across the world to spread US influence in a way that does not require an M4. So yes, I fully support the reimplementation and the reinstallation of the USAID and the spreading of soft power throughout the world, because we do not just have to have the biggest gun. We can also have the biggest smile, and we can also just be willing to help people because we have the ability to do so. We are the wealthiest country in the world. We have the largest economy in the world. And it was literally a fraction of a percentage of the US budget to have USAID continue to operate. We may have saved a couple of dollars, but we have also cost us decades of progress.
Great. So the fifth question goes to Mr. Pixley. By some measure, the oil and gas industry makes up about 20 to 30% of the GDP of Oklahoma. However, the Democratic stance on energy policy is centered on transitioning to clean, renewable energy sources to combat climate change. How would you balance these two potentially competing priorities?
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question. And any politician in Oklahoma that doesn't think they're going to have to answer a question about oil and natural gas is crazy. And yes, there's a huge impact. Economically, a huge impact. Just ask OG&E, there's signs on the highway that tell them how big the impact is that they have here. There's also, importantly, a cultural element to this too. There are people in the state of Oklahoma who've never been on the side of an oil rig and have no direct connection to but they see themselves as being part of this thing that is Oklahoma, and they have a affinity for this. And we can't dismiss that. So when I'm having conversations with folks, what I tell everybody is, and if you're above 40 in this room, you'll probably get this reference. I'm a pretty darn progressive dude. And if I could change the world like that, I'll explain later. It would be a pretty progressive place. But that's not the job of a congressman, to go to Washington, D.C. and impose their will on their district. It's to go to their district and carry their water in DC. So how does a guy like me, who will hug a tree if he gets a chance and would love to see windmills and solar and renewable energy because I want my grandkids and great grandkids to have a planet to live on and water to drink, and maybe we could still have farms in in this band of our country. How do I balance that and still take care of oil and natural gas producers in Oklahoma? Well, it's by having a rational conversation with them. The way I look at oil and natural gas, I put myself in their shoes. If I have an oil company or oil rig, I have a money tree. And if my neighbor comes over and says, your money tree is ugly, it's ruining my view, cut it down, I'm going to give them a hand gesture that you may have seen on the news the other day. If you want someone to cut down their money tree, you have to financially incentivize them to do it. You have to tell them this will be in your best interest. And as a Democrat, just saying, wind, solar is the way to go. And if you're ignoring that, you hate your children, you hate our planet, and you're a bad person, that they're never going to bend. We need to find a way, Democrats, especially in Oklahoma, need to find a way to find what we have in common and embrace it. And when we have something that's a big difference, find some way to make a connection. You have to have some empathy. And I'm not saying that you walk into Harold Ham's office and have to feel sorry for the guy, but the truth is, he's not going to do anything. It's not in his financial interest. So we need to figure out ways to incentivize that. And whether that's tax breaks or long-term incentives or other mechanisms the government can incentivize them to make the transition, we should do that. And we should pursue that heavily, because arm twisting has never worked. It only provides more resistance on that front. Thanks.
The United States, in many ways, our modern economy is built on oil and gas. We went through an industrial revolution and we became a modernized society. And in doing that, we found electricity. But then we realized that there was another power source that would allow us to disconnect and unplug and still be able to go throughout the world and operate. And that is the oil and gas that we're talking about today. And so for so many reasons, I am really proud of the progress that this country has made in it being pushing it to the forefront and creating the technologies that basically run the world today. But I also believe that just because something is true today, and just because we've always done something the way we do it, is not a reason to stop. We must continue to innovate, expand, grow, and develop, especially when you discover that that which you rely on is poison and has the potential to kill, to harm, and to hurt. Just look at the oil spills that we have had. Just look at the amount of devices that go into your vehicle to change what comes out of your exhaust in the rear. We know that we can do so much more than that. And we were. We had a Green New Deal that was going to bring tens of thousands of high-paying jobs to the United States of America, that was going to expand our energy generation portfolio and diversify it. And I was so excited. My disappointment with killing the Green New Deal is not because I blame oil and gas for the success that they have had. Instead, it's because it is too short-sighted to say that we have a robust oil and gas industry, and that's the only industry that we need. I am not asking the federal government to today go build those solar panels and those wind farms that I want to see spread throughout our country. But what I am asking is to allow those who want to research that, who want to build it on their property, and the municipalities that want to allow wind generation, for example, that it just doesn't get in their way. Because that's what we're experiencing today. We're seeing the cancellation of grant money. We're seeing the drill, baby, drill as the only energy policy that we currently have in the United States of America. But for those like me who want to have a wind farm or want to have a solar farm, it is on the government to allow that innovation and that research to continue, not to stifle it and not to stop it just because we already have a robust industry that currently exists. Thank you.
Great. Questions about energy from the audience? All right, seeing none, I'll move on to our sixth and final question. Mr. Jacob will answer this question first. The Social Security Trust Fund is set to run out in the next decade, meaning the program will only be able to pay out approximately 80% of benefits. Solving this problem is mathematically easy, but politically difficult. How would you make sure seniors receive the benefits they earned while making sure the federal budget doesn't spiral out of control?
My goal is to ensure that everyone receives the benefit that you have earned, because it is you who is investing in a Social Security trust fund that is set to fail you. But that failure is purely political, as has been alluded to. What we know to be true is that the FICA cap is $184,500 per year. What that means is that anyone who, the first 185, I'm just going to round it, first $185,000 that you earn per year, you're going to pay the 6 point whatever percent into the Social Security Administration, and that every dollar you earn over 185,000, you don't have to pay into Social Security at all. And that means that people like Zuckerberg and Musk and Jeff Bezos, they satisfy their Social Security Administration payments, their FICA payments, within the first hour of every single new year. And that all billionaires in the United States have already satisfied their Social Security FICA cap. And that's the problem. While it is simple to say, and my solution, I believe, is very simple, and I'm not the one who came up with it, clearly, it needs more people to get behind it to pass, and that is simply eliminating the FICA cap. We know We know it to be true that if the FICA cap is eliminated, then overnight the Social Security Trust Fund gains 75 years of solvency instead of becoming insolvent in the next 10. We know that that is one piece of legislation and that you and I are already paying, most of us in this room are already paying for every dollar we earn throughout the year into the Social Security Administration. It will not affect this room. It affects the wealthiest among us. And that's why it hasn't been passed, because of the lobby against it. And so what I am here to say is that I support eliminating the FICA cap. I support ensuring that your entitlement program is there for you when it is time for you to draw it. Because wonderfully, we have a wide variety of ages in this room. And I believe that it is incumbent upon us to ensure that every person in this room is able to draw from that Social Security Trust Fund when we hit the correct age and we're able to retire. That's all that I ask of the federal government today.
The federal government stealing from the Social Security Trust Fund is one of the issues that's causing it to be at risk in the first place. They should keep their hands off of it. It's our money. Put it in a big pot and leave it alone. The second thing, I agree with what Mitchell said about raising the cap or eliminating the cap, but something we really need to address and understand is rich people don't take salaries. Rich people have tax and payment incentives, stock options, and other ways that fill their pockets and make sure their yachts have gas and all that other stuff without taking a penny of salary. Fixing this problem begins with what Mitchell said. The pushback against it not only comes from rich people, not necessarily because that salary they don't pay will be affected. It's because they run companies who match our Social Security. The Social Security percentage we pay is matched by our employer. Employers have to put that up. They don't want to pay more. We need to raise that cap, eliminate the cap, and at the same time, the only way to keep it, give it the 75 years that Mitchell's talking about or more is at the same time, cap, and this may be controversial, maybe you'll be mad at me, but I'm gonna say it, cap how much you get out of Social Security. Because right now, the maximum you get is a pretty reasonable number. But if we raise the max you push in, and then everybody who gets to retirement age takes all of that back out, it slows it down. I can imagine a world where we don't raise the payout of Social Security at the same rate that we raise the limit. I think that's a reasonable approach that prolongs it and ensures that Social Security is there for the people who need it most. Because while I still hope I get Social Security when the day comes, I do. I'm 53, maybe it's going to be there. If we get elected, it's going to be there. But I am not going to need Social Security. I'm a retired colonel in the United States Air Force, and my pension is pretty good. And Oklahoma's pretty good cost of living. There are people out there who rely to put food on the table and keep a roof over their head Social Security. And if I need to be in a world where my Social Security doesn't go up as much as somebody who's on the ragged edge of survival, I can live with that. That's a pretty easy choice for me as a person who sees humanity in others. So a Social Security system can be fixed. It's a one-page piece of legislation, and I think the pushback from corporate America is about that other percentage, and we can pressure them to do that.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Billionaires pay taxes sometimes that do ultimately flow into entitlement programs such as, for example, SNAP. And yet, SNAP has an asset test, and if you own or are worth too much money, then you cannot receive SNAP benefits. So why don't we simply eliminate the FICA cap and add an asset test to receiving Social Security? Because while it is true that the billionaires will pay the most into Social Security, quite simply and quite frankly, they also don't need it. So let's eliminate the FICA cap, put in an asset test to receive that, and it can be high, my friends, and still be left to only benefit the hardworking Americans who actually need it.
In the back.
Hello, my name is Jasmine Thomas, and I am here to ask the question for both of them because I'm a military spouse myself. And they know the sacrifice firsthand because they're front lines, but also because they've had families while they were in service. So, but the question is here is that a lot of people miss out on kids with disabilities. So I heard a lot of pay in, but what about the people with disabilities who can't even go to work or who couldn't even pay into these things? What is the solution for them to continue to get their support, you know, as people who didn't ask to not be able to work?
Sure.
So in addition to the system that we have right now, you can receive your Social Security income. You can also receive Social Security Disability Income, or SSDI. And that is another payment that comes out from the Social Security Administration, and that continues to put additional pressure on the system, because it is true that if you're receiving an SSDI payment, that you can't pay into the program. And I support leaving those SSDI payments because the point of entitlement programs is to be there. A social safety net is why they were created, to help those who just need a little bit of help. And I believe that eliminating that FICA cap, increasing the amount of funds that are going into the trust fund, will help address that same issue. It will allow us to continue to pay the current SSDI payments, and there has been discussion of expanding that to include more categories of people and more types of disabilities for a very long time. But there's been no appetite for that, while we've also fought on whether or not we should even allow that system to be solvent in the first place. So let's eliminate the FICA cap. Let's add that asset test, and let's allow the system to be able to take care of all of the Americans that it was originally designed to help and benefit, instead of continuing to whittle it down and wonder if my Social Security will be eliminated next.
One more question. Not necessarily on Social Security, do we, Hilda?
We're supposed to keep it on topic. I'm sorry.
Hi, Matt Esker. So it was referenced that one of the big obstacles to fixing the solvency issue with Social Security was the lobbying, right? So until we can get big money out of our bought and paid for Congress and get rid of Citizens United, this is a discussion that is theoretical. How do we do that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I'm glad you brought it up because we haven't mentioned Citizens United yet. I don't think that maybe that was going to be your seventh question if we went to seven. Citizens United has to be overturned. It's going to take strength from people, but the truth is the people in Congress right now, there's whole websites dedicated to, like, is your congressman and a bad word, right? If you haven't seen those yet, it breaks down where they get their money, who butters their bread. And it's the more you look at that, the more it seems to me that the majority of Congress is at least partially beholden to people that aren't in their district. And the root error of that is this completely false invention by the Supreme Court that corporations are people and that money equals speech. Neither of those things are true. And I'll just, without, the Supreme Court, I'm not a lawyer and, I'm not going to pretend to be one, but, so it may seem like, arrogant of me to argue with 9 Supreme Court justices who decided that case. But let's just break it down to human terms. If money is speech, let's say money is speech. If the idea in American society is that any one of us with our First Amendment rights to address grievances with our government, to stand in the town square and say, I don't like this, to the extent that free speech exists, I can be on my soapbox, Mitchell can be on his, and we're both going to have our voice heard. With Citizens United and money equals speech, we've created a world where more money equals more speech or unlimited speech, the equivalent of me standing on a soapbox and saying something that I think I've thought through and very passionate about. And meanwhile, sponsored by Toyota, sets up a sound stage and just blares out concert level noise over the top of me. We have the equivalent of that now. And when you think of it that way, and we don't have an equal footing anymore. Your voice is smaller than a rich person's voice who has a corporate person calling them. And any congressman who's taking corporate money of any kind is suspect. And even if their voting record looks clean, in my mind, I always ask myself, is there any chance that they're getting this special phone call in the middle of the night that's adjusting these things and not having them speaking for their people? So I don't know what the methodology is. I think right now, today's Congress would be no way, but after our blue wave, and let's not fool ourselves. If Mitchell or I go to Congress, there's been a blue wave. So when we get there, we need to immediately start breaking glass. We can't wait. We can't wait until, because soon will be, it'll be a presidential election year, and then some of the leadership right now that I think are kind of more like, let's just be really strategic. No, I'm going there. I'm going to break glass. I'm a trauma surgeon. I'm going there to keep this patient alive so we can survive and get him to the ICU and do the fancy stuff to stitch him up and make him look pretty. We have to save this thing first.
Now we can go 2.5 minutes to offer concluding remarks. Since Mr. Jacob introduced himself first, Mr. Pixley will offer his concluding remarks first.
Thank you again for being here. The fact that there's even more people now than when we started is it's amazing, and I hope the folks in back are taking pictures of this because I think it sends a clear signal. Jacob's right. This is a job interview, and I would say the members of the community of the 4th Congressional District are in pretty good shape because they have an embarrassment of riches, I think, in quality candidates that are throwing their hats in the ring. So I want to commend Jacob, or Mitchell. I'm sorry, I did that to his brother. Sorry. I want to commend anybody who does this. Now I know firsthand it's hard to do this. But it is a job interview, and this is the first big public appearance we've done. I'm sure there will be more, but I would ask you to, as you walk out the door, ask yourself, not just what your personal impression was on the spot, whether each of us did a good job, but ask yourself when you walk out the door and you need to go tell your neighbor what you learned today. You need to convince your maybe Republican light neighbor or your independent neighbor of what's next in our country and that we have quality candidates in Congress. When you talk about us to them, how are you going to convince them? I'm going to ask you to consider that we need to be attractive to a broader swath than cornbread and beans population up in Norman and others. So I'm working hard to make sure that I represent myself as honestly as I can muster. Sometimes I say things that people don't want to hear, but the truth is, when you go to Washington, D.C., you have to be prepared to have hard conversations with people. Look them in the eye and say, I disagree with you, but we need to find a way to work together because this is not something we can just skip. Congress has a reputation of working 4-day weeks and taking 60 days off over the summer. This is a job that is going to require us to double down, work some overtime, maybe order a pizza and get some stuff done early in the year, so not wait until September 29th to work on a budget. And that's me, undistracted and mission focused for the rest of my dying day, till my dying day. Thank you very much for being here.
I'm like so many of you, and I'm a member of the working class. I work for the paycheck that I use to pay my bills every month. And like so many of you, I am blessed to be a homeowner because, again, I bought in 2019 when we only had to pay $139,000. And yet I still have to work to pay for that mortgage. And I will be working, my friends, for at least 30 more years before I'm eligible to retire. I am one of 9 children, and I have 5 boys. And I'll tell you right now, I'm not a rich man. So what I can tell you is that I know what it's like to pull myself up by the bootstraps and to thrive in spite of and despite my circumstances. I am honored that this gorgeous and incredible woman right here chose to marry me. And I want to fix our immigration system because I want more incredible humans just like her to also become naturalized citizens. My friends, I want to build the Small Business Administration because I have those 5 boys, and I believe in a future with opportunity and success for them too. And so as we close out tonight, you've had a chance to hear from both of us. Again, you're the hiring committee. It's not about what we said tonight. It's about what you're going to do next. And so I stand before you to ask humbly for your vote on June 16th. I would be honored to carry the Democratic nomination for CD4 into the November general election. But this is only the beginning, and I need your help. So I'm going to task you with two things tonight. Get involved in the campaign. Come and knock some doors with me and make some phone calls. In fact, tomorrow at the headquarters in Norman from 2 to 4 p.m., you can come and do the phone bank with me. And then I'm going to ask you to talk to your neighbors, your friends, and your family and get them involved in the campaign too. And I would be truly honored to come to a living room near you. Again, thank you for being here. The fact that you're here, quite frankly, means that you care more about this democracy than Tom Cole, who can't be bothered. And I'm so glad to be on this journey with you. The work gets started today. Thank you for being here. I'll talk to you outside.